So can they not do ministry on the seventh day? Can a full-time minister do ministry on the seventh day?
This preacher is not listening at all.
But God said, okay, go hew me another stone. And he wrote it with his own finger. He didn't let anybody else write it.
Video to say the Seventh-day Adventist is wrong. He makes a video to speak against the Seventh-day Adventist man. And I'm like, bruh, do you know what you just did?
On the Sabbath, where do you draw the line? Because the New Testament doesn't say anything about it.
You know what I'm saying? He asks the question and he keeps talking. That means you're not trying to hear anything.
Because I am out of here.
Oh, there goes an amazing story. Another street preacher is confronting and talking to a Seventh-day Adventist. Now, he recorded this story to show that the Adventist man is in the wrong, but I will tell you, my friend, I don't think the Adventist man is in the wrong here. I don't think so. The man really believes that he is in the right when he is actually in the wrong. So let's take a listen, because he is now talking to the Seventh-day Adventist. The Seventh-day Adventist guy is going to make an argument about the law of God and the Sabbath, and he's going to try to make an argument as well. He's going to mention a number of scriptures. I want to go through those scriptures very quickly to show that this man has no idea what he is saying, because the Adventist man in this video is actually correct. You will see what I mean. Link in the description below. Like and subscribe to the page. Click the bell icon for more. Let's take a listen.
You will likewise perish. This is what the Bible teaches people. Believe within him will not perish but have everlasting life.
This is facts. I love it. I love what I'm hearing so far, but and then it's gonna go a different direction. Watch this.
Will not perish but have everlasting life. How's it going, bud?
So he said, I just finished explaining to him that if he wants to keep the Sabbath according to the Bible, he has to do it according to Numbers 28, verse 9, sacrificing some lambs along with a grain and grain offering. And I told him I was going to record the conversation. Okay. I don't know why he says that. I don't know why he says that. Anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah, hey, bud.
Why are you going to record it?
Because this is what I do. I'm a street evangelist, right?
Okay, well.
Yeah. So you're a Seventh-day Adventist?
So let me just tell you. So.
Okay. Are you a Seventh-day Adventist?
Let me just talk to you about it.
All right, sure. I'll give you a couple of minutes.
Yeah, just give me a couple of minutes. Okay, so those are talking about the time when people would keep like the feasts and all that.
Right.
Right? They were keeping the feasts. So Moses made a law. That one was written in a book.
Yeah.
God made his 10 Commandments, which he wrote with his own finger. Nobody else wrote the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so Moses broke the commandments or whatever. But God said, okay, go hew me another stone. And then he wrote it with his own finger. He didn't let anybody else write it. There's only 3 things the Bible calls truth. Jesus says, I'm the way, truth, and life, right? Then it says, sanctify them through thy word is truth. So the Bible is truth. And then it says the commandments are true and faithful. The commandments are God's character, right? It's basically talking about love. So when Moses wrote these laws, they were ceremonial laws. Everything to do with the sacrifices and everything.
Right.
And certain Sabbath days that they had to keep as well.
Yeah.
It's completely separate from the 7th-day Sabbath in the 10 Commandments that God made. So when Jesus died on the cross, all those ceremonial laws of Moses' law came to an end, so they didn't have to do those ceremonies anymore because Jesus died, right? But the Sabbath, the 7th-day Sabbath, Jesus still kept that. In fact, his followers kept it even afterwards as well. And the Bible tells us in Acts 17:2, it says that they reason with them, Paul reasoned with them out of scriptures on the Sabbath day, right? And so they still kept the Sabbath holy. Now, had Jesus changed another day? Well, if you read Hebrews chapter 4, it says that God rested from his works on the Sabbath day, right? And so he never changed the Sabbath to Sunday. In fact, the Catholic Church changed the Saturday to Sunday. Okay. It's their law. It's not a command of God, it's a command of man. Okay. So that came to an end when Jesus died, like the Moses law, but not the Sabbath. The 7th day.
This is facts, man. This is common sense. He just gave him a perfect and awesome, well thought out, humble, biblically balanced Bible study. He just did. In just about 3 minutes in a video, he just schooled the man with a whole lot of humility. This is a 7th-day Adventist understanding. He gave you the difference between Moses' law and the Noah law. Okay, there were different laws in the Bible. There was the moral law, which is written by God, Moses' law written by Moses himself, and also there was also dietary laws, okay, also written by Moses. Doesn't mean all dietary laws were bad, okay, they still can be applied today. And there was ceremonial laws, and there was also civil laws, and there was also the moral laws. There's a difference. Anyway, the point I'm trying to say is there's a difference. When it comes to the 10 Commandments, these are called the moral law. These were written by God. When it comes to the laws of Moses, and that's the ceremonial laws, sacrificial laws, and so on, these things, they had a role to play in the light with the nations of Israel. But they came to an end at the cross of Christ. Jesus nailed them to his cross, took them out of the way because they were shadow of the things to come for the bodies of Christ. That's what Colossians is speaking about. He just explained that. And he also shows how the Sabbath is also applicable in the New Testament. Also in the book of Acts is mentioned. Jesus says in Matthew 24 that the disciples must not forget, must pray that their flight be not on the winter or on the Sabbath day. And that was years after Jesus had passed away, right? Years after Jesus died and resurrected and ascended. So we're talking about all the way AD 70 when this took place. So Christ looked into the future and saw that his people were still going to be keeping the Sabbath. All of that factor is lined up in the New Testament, not a single proof for Sunday. And he just schooled the man. Now, I want you to hear what the preacher is going to do. The man just divided the law of Moses and the law of God and showed that there is a difference between the two. What the preacher is going to do is going to bring those two together again, and he's going to make it look like there is no difference. He's going to merge those two. Completely miss the mark, as if the man didn't just tell him anything at all. And anyway, it's just crazy. And then he makes the video to say the Seventh-day Adventist is wrong. He makes a video to speak against the Seventh-day Adventist man, and I'm like, bruh, do you know what you just did?
Sabbath it's still a part of the 10 Commandments.
Okay,
and
so
if you're going to preach about saying breaking the law and everything,
let me
it
go
has to
now.
do with something. Yeah, go ahead.
So we'll have a fair conversation, right? So Hebrews 4 is not specifically talking about the seventh-day Sabbath, and Romans 14 says you can keep a day. One person esteems one day over another, and other people esteem every day alike. Okay, that is talking about the Sabbath.
And
because yes, it is. Let me finish. Are you gonna let me go? I let you go, right? It doesn't. You don't.
Okay,
I'm not gonna try and prove you, right? Like I'm not gonna argue with you. I'm not gonna try and make you look bad. I'm just gonna tell you. So if you read the death list in the Bible, like read Galatians 5:19-21, it tells us what sin God hates. It's all the same stuff as the 10 Commandments, but this says nothing about the Sabbath, right? 1 Corinthians 6:9-10 talks about sexual immorality, greed, that's the same as coveting, all this stuff, but nothing about the Sabbath, right? Romans 1:29-32 talks all about the sin God hates, but nothing about the Sabbath, nothing about the pork, right? So it says in Romans also, if you want to keep the ceremonial law to be made right with God, you have to keep all of it. So you have to keep all of it. And Romans 14 says clearly, let me finish. Romans 14 says clearly, if you want to, one person esteems one day over another, other people esteem all days the same. Let each person be convinced that whatever you do is right, and just do it unto the Lord, and don't condemn other people for what they choose to do, which is exactly what you are doing.
No,
condemning people for it.
Okay,
right. So that was part of the old system of worship, right? That's why it's not in any of the lists of sin in the New Testament, because that was part of the old form of worship. It's gone now, right?
It's part of the list of sins.
No, it's not.
Yes,
in the New Testament, no, it's not.
The New Testament, it talks about the Sabbath all the time.
No, it doesn't. It never says you have to keep it, though. It says choose any day alike.
You don't believe in the Old Testament at all, then?
I believe so. The ceremonial law. There's a ceremonial law and the moral law.
See,
right?
everything breaks down.
Let me finish. There's the ceremonial law and the moral law, right? The ceremonial law is gone. Jesus Christ died. He became our high priest, the one-time sacrifice, right? So we don't need that stuff anymore. All that old form of worship is gone, and now we worship in spirit and truth. We are the temple. We're circumcised in the heart, right? All that stuff is gone, right? So we worship every single day, not just one day, right? The one day of worship was part of the old ceremonial stuff. Did you want to chat, bro?
I'll come back.
All right. Right, so that's what I believe. You're never going to change my mind. I just did a big study on it and a big sermon on it, right?
I'm just trying to tell you.
Right, but you're condemning people for not keeping the Sabbath, and I'm telling you it's unbiblical.
It's the law. It's in the 10 Commandments, and
right.
The Bible tells us that.
So how do you keep the Sabbath then? What do you do and what do you not do on the Sabbath?
Well, what the Bible tells us not to.
Well, what do you do on the Sabbath? What can you not do on the
We don't
Sabbath?
work on the Sabbath. We don't go and buy on the Sabbath. We don't. We prepare for the Sabbath on Friday. Like
What do you do? Do you get the grains and the bread and all the stuff? Do you get the wine, the grain, the bread, all that stuff? How do you decide what you can do and you can't do? Because Jesus said you can do good on the Sabbath, right?
Of course.
So what about somebody that's in full-time ministry? If they're doing good every day, do they still have to take one day off?
No, they can do what they want to.
Right. So
Like,
what if that's not their job? Then they're working and they're doing good. So can they not do ministry on the seventh day? Can a full-time minister do ministry on the seventh day if he's doing good?
This preacher is not listening at all, man. It's, you can be, the deception is so deep. And this is why I have to make these videos, because consistently you have to have the conversation. He really thinks he's saying something good. He really thinks he's got an argument here. I mean, are you serious? This guy is... Anyway, and he really believes he's got the right things. He really believes he's winning this argument. He made a video and posted to show how great of a thing he just did. And people in the comment are saying, "You go, preacher. Fight the good fight of faith, brother." Awesome. I mean, it's just sad. It's sad. People are not studying the Bible.
That's what he does. I mean, he preaches on Sabbath. You know what? Jesus preached on Sabbath.
So you're just saying
Jesus,
you can't.
so now you're saying that people can't heal on Sabbath.
No, that's what you're saying.
No, I didn't say that. You're sounding just like what the Pharisees would say.
Well, no,
Jesus couldn't heal on the Sabbath.
Sorry. Right, but I'm asking you, what can we keep and not keep? I disagree with you, but for you, what can you do and not do?
He already answered you, and you didn't care about the answer. You're not asking the question because you want to know. You're asking the question just to find a reason to fight back. You're not really trying to learn.
On the Sabbath, where do you draw the line? Because the New Testament doesn't say anything about it.
You know what I'm saying? He asks the question and he keeps talking. That means you're not trying to hear anything. Why can we keep and not keep? Where do you draw the line? Yada, yada, yada. Well, if you already know the answer, what's the point of you asking the question?
The Old Testament gave a clear...
From our church, they still work on Sabbath. Like some doctors and nurses, they still work.
Right.
And as part of healing and as part of doing other things, obviously there's certain things we can't do.
So where do you draw the line? Well, you don't know, because the Bible doesn't say. The Bible says if you want to keep the Sabbath in Numbers 28, sacrifice your lambs, go do your ceremonial stuff, do your grains, do your bread, do all the stuff. If you want to be saved by that, go and do that.
It's
but
not about
other than that, you don't know.
You're just trying to break things down.
You don't know what to do, though.
Yes, I do know, because I've lived
You're saying people work on it, though. You're saying people in your church work that day. So are those people going to hell?
I'm saying that they work, but you know what they do? They actually donate the money that they work for doing that day.
That doesn't. So that's something they made up, though. They're still working.
Certain things, like you're not gonna leave a sick person stay there by themselves.
Right, but you just said your own church works on Sunday or Saturday, whatever your Sabbath is.
On the medical field.
So where do you draw the line, though?
People are not gonna do other things.
Preacher man, there is a difference with doing service to help your fellow man. There's a difference with doing good, but there's also a difference with doing the kind of servile work that is more centered around the man or making money or an industry. But when you're doing the work of the Lord on the Sabbath, it's not the same thing. It's similar to what Jesus was doing, healing and preaching and teaching and helping those who were in need. Not the same thing. But he doesn't seem to understand that. He really thinks he's winning an argument because he's talking so much.
So,
well, what if they think their job is doing good? A fireman's job is good. A policeman's job is good. Every job is good. People that cook food are doing good. They're making food for people. See, you can't. It becomes.
Oh man, the Babylonian doctrine is so bad. You gotta pray for people like this. He really believes he's saying something good. He really believes. He recorded the video. A 7-day Adventist step up to a street preacher and then runs away. Well, I'll run away from you too if you're talking like that. Anyway, I don't know who this guy. Okay, this is Dan Purden. Dan Purden, I'm going to put a link in the description after I do this reaction video. I hope you're watching this. Dan, you didn't make any sense at all. You completely missed what the man was saying, Dan. You weren't listening. You were doing a whole lot of talking. Your preconceived notion blocked your judgment. You were not able to digest the message that was shared with you, Dan. And I understand. Because I was once in your place, Dan.
I am telling the truth.
So he spoke about Romans chapter 14, and he says Romans chapter 14 has to do with the Sabbath, right?
Romans 14 says clearly, if you want to, one person esteems one day over another, other people esteem all days the same.
One keepeth a Sabbath, worth keepeth Sunday. We should not judge each other. And I want to say this is wrong. Because Romans chapter 14 is not speaking about the Sabbath at all. Let's read the text. One man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. How can I know that this has nothing to do with the biblical Sabbath? The day that they're talking about here, is it the Sabbath day, or are these days for different reasons? Let's look at it. Easy. One word you need to look for. The word eateth. Listen to what it says. He says, first of all, there is him that is weak in faith receiveth ye, but not doubtful in disputation. But for one that believeth that he may, one word, eat, who is, and then listen to this, another who is weak, eat. So you want to know what this is about? Eat. 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 Romans chapter 14 is about what? It's dealing with eating habits. Let's keep reading. The same verb keeps popping up over and over again. Let's keep reading. It says, regardeth him that saith unto the Lord, and he went on to say, eat again. Eat to the Lord. Eat if not. Eat if not. Guys, what is Romans chapter 14 about? Is it about the day of worship? How could you make it about the day of worship when it says eat, 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 eat? Like, guys, this is an easy way to study the Bible. Just look at what is being repeated here. What's being repeated here is the word eating. So what's going on in Romans chapter 14? It has nothing to do with worship. It was about men who was weak because of the food that they were eating. Some people were eating herbs or vegetables, and some other people were struggling with meat, and some people were struggling with gluttony. And they say we need to do something to overcome where we are struggling in certain eating habits. So they put a day apart to do that. This is good to do even today. To overcome a certain habit that has a strong hold on you, you set a fasting day apart once a week. You pick a day for that. This is what Paul is talking about here. And Paul is saying, do not judge each other about that. Let every person make up their minds and be convinced in his own mind. Don't try to make this a religious thing. It's a personal choice. That's it. That's what this text is talking about. This is so easy, friends. Just look at the word. Eat, 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 eat. Not worship. Not keeping a day holy. So how could you make Romans chapter 14 about the Sabbath? When the verb eating is repeated over and over again, all you have to do is read the text and apply the context. Not about the Sabbath.
That God made. So when Jesus died on the cross, all those ceremonial laws of Moses' law came to an end, so they didn't have to do those ceremonies anymore because Jesus died, right? But the Sabbath,
Colossians has nothing to do with the Sabbath either. Colossians chapter 2 oftentimes is the one that is used, and I have a whole study on this. And listen, I'm almost done. Be sure I can tell you. So this is not about the Sabbath. You know how I know? He says, let them judge you in meat or drink or in respect of holy day or new moons or Sabbath days. Oh, James, Sabbath days, there it is right there. I say, wait, how you know this is about the Sabbath? The 7-day Sabbath. Let me explain to you. Not every time the word Sabbath in the New Testament or Old Testament means the 7th-day Sabbath. There was also what is known as yearly Sabbaths. Sometimes the feast days were called Sabbaths. How do I know this is about the feast days? Okay, in the yearly Sabbaths, very easy. Meat, drink, holy days, new moons. These are all sanctuary language. This is all about the law of Moses. In connection to it is the Sabbath days. The Sabbath days here is not the 7-day Sabbath. It's part of the yearly Sabbaths because the context is telling you that. And just in case you think I'm making this up, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us. So at the top of the chain is the handwriting of ordinances. This is what this is addressing. The handwriting of ordinances is made up of what? Meat, drink, holy days, new moons. Subject and subdivisions, right? So when you put that in context, we are told these things are shadow of things to come, the bodies of Christ. Who wrote the handwriting of ordinances? Was the law of God written by human hands? No, it was written with the finger of God. But who wrote the handwriting of ordinances? Moses. Were they for us or against us in the New Testament? They were against us. But what else were they? They were contrary to us. Why? Because Jesus died on the cross. What happened to them? Jesus took them out of the way, nailed them to the cross. Exactly. So this is why Paul can say, you cannot judge people in these things anymore. Why? Because Jesus already dealt with them. They were a shadow of things to come in the bodies of Christ. So this entire text here, these things were nailed to the cross because they were part of the handwriting of ordinances. You cannot make this a Sabbath text. Why? Because the Sabbath is in the fourth commandment. It's part of the 10 Commandments. These Sabbath days are in connection to the blotting out of ordinances, handwriting of ordinances. This is Moses' law. So therefore, these are the yearly Sabbaths, not the 7-day Sabbath. It's that simple. It's that simple. Now, let's move on. Some people, he said, it was never commanded in the New Testament. What do you mean it's never commanded?
All right, so Hebrews 4 is not specifically talking about the seventh-day Sabbath.
Let's go to Hebrews chapter 4. Hebrews chapter 4 mentioned the word rest several times. We have it here, rest in verse 1. And next one we have the word rest, I believe, is right there, verse 3. It says it at least 4 times. There it is again. There it is again. Okay. So look at verse 9. When you come to verse 9, the word rest is mentioned here. So, okay. So in Hebrews chapter 4, the word rest is mentioned several times. First of all, we have it in verse 1. It says, let us enter into his rest. There we have it again, the word rest. Rest. And we have another one. All the way down here. It is rest. What's the difference between all 4 of them? The first 3, look at this, is not the Sabbath day rest. The first 3 has to do with tranquility, has to do with resting in Jesus, has to do with faith in Christ. There it is right there. G, 2, 6, 6, 3. What's the word you have? It takes a little bit of time to do this. Catapausis. Catapausis. And when you go down to the next one, you're going to find the same thing. The first 3 is the same thing. Catapausis. So you find the first 3 times the word rest is mentioned is catapausis. What is catapausis? What is that? Reposing down, that is abode or rest. This is what happens when a person gets into a relationship with Jesus Christ. He is at rest from his sinful practices, from his labor, tranquility, peace with God. This is the rest that Jesus offers. This is the rest we find in the book of Matthew 11, verse 28. I will give you rest. Okay, this is the rest, right? Because you believe in Jesus. But when you go to verse 9, there is another word for rest. It is G4520. What is that? Sabbatismo. Not the same word. So what Hebrews is doing is showing that there is a relationship with faith in Jesus and the keeping of the Sabbath. There is a relationship. So yes, there is a spiritual component to the Sabbath, but the literal observance of the Sabbath are perfectly united. So that's why a person can say, oh, we keep every day holy. Jesus is my Sabbath. I can understand what you're saying, spiritually speaking, but you cannot neglect the 7-day Sabbath because Jesus provides, there is a rest in Jesus, but that rest does not cancel the 4th commandment. It does not. This is what Paul is doing here, is uniting both rest in Jesus and rest on the 7th day are not at odds with each other. They are perfectly united. That's what the text is telling you, my friend. So how do you miss that? You cannot miss it, man. So the preacher man didn't seem to understand this.
If you read the death list in the Bible, like read Galatians 5:19 to 21, it tells us what sin God hates. It's all the same stuff. as the 10 Commandments, but this says nothing about the Sabbath, right? 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10 talks about sexual immorality, greed, that's the same as coveting, all this stuff, but nothing about the Sabbath, right?
So I had to go back to Luke chapter 16, verse 17. And what does it say? And this is the one text, and oh man, they will never quote this text. Luke 16, verse 17. It is easier for heaven and earth to pass away than one tittle of the law to fail. You cannot get rid of one. Not one of God's 10 commandments can be done away with. You cannot. You cannot do that. To do it is bad, is deadly. James 2 verse 10 say, whosoever obeys the whole law and yet offend in one point is guilty of all. In Isaiah 58, we are told that we ought to not do any labor on God's Sabbath day, nor speaking our own words. We must call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord honorable. The 7-day Sabbath is the Sabbath of the Lord. It is not something you can just get rid of. It is part of the 10 commandments. It was written with the finger of God. Old and New Testament kept it. Oh, you said it was not commanded in the New Testament? Really? What is Jesus doing here? Luke 4:16. Jesus went to church on the Sabbath day, as his custom was. He went in the synagogue on the Sabbath day, stood up to read. Isn't that a good enough example? Isn't that a commandment for you? Oh, well, the followers of Christ, after Jesus died on the cross, guess what they did? Look at this. Luke 23. We are told about spices, right? To anoint the body of Jesus, but they found that he was dead and the Sabbath was coming. And what did they do? They returned and prepared spices and ointments and rested on the Sabbath day according to the commandment. Oh, I thought he wasn't commanded. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Jesus says in Luke 24 that pray that your flight be not on the winter nor on the Sabbath day. There you go. If you go to the book of Acts, again, Acts 17, he mentioned Acts 17, verse 2. And as the manner was, he went unto the street. Paul, as his manner was, went into them 3 Sabbath days, reasoned with them out of the scriptures. What is Paul doing? He's keeping the Sabbath with both Jews and Gentiles. Oh, look at this. 13. Let's go to 40 something. Acts 13. We are told the Jews went out of the synagogue, right? And the Gentiles came, that the same word that was preached to the Jews will be preached to them the next Sabbath. They didn't come back tomorrow morning for Sunday keeping. No. They came back 7 days later. We are told in verse 44, and the next day came almost the whole city to hear the word of God. Jews and Gentiles are keeping Sabbath, buddy. There's no confusion here. The Bible is abundantly clear. So I don't know what's going on with the preacher man. The preacher man simply needs a dose of honesty. He needs to realize, brother, man, you've been in the wrong. That's all. You've been in the wrong. You've been in the wrong for a long time. They've been lying to you, but.
To Sunday. In fact, the Catholic Church changed the Saturday to Sunday.
Okay.
It's their law. It's not a command of God. It's a command of man. Okay.
Like and subscribe to the page. Click the bell icon for more. I felt the need to address this. I have to make videos addressing these texts. A lot of these texts are being used and abused, and I'm going to show you how to clean up these texts and make sense of them. Share your thought and perspective with me. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. It is the Lord's day. Honor my Sabbath, for it is a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am the Lord that doeth sanctify you. Let's keep fighting. Until next time, have a good one. Bye.